First of all, we are going to talk about iterators and in general more iterables. I'm sure if you're familiar with most of these constructs. I'm going just to quickly review them to point out the similarities between them and the interesting parts. So there are a number of data structures in Python that you can iterate over the elements of it using the for in construct. Let me see a couple of them. So for example, here I have a list of, in this case, numbers, and I can go over the elements like this for num in numbers, and then, for example, print them out. I can also just print out the content of the whole list. The same with a string. So I can iterate over the sort of elements of a string, which would be the characters. So in this case, for, and again, just a variable name cr in name, and it would just iterate over the characters one by one. So the output of the first one would be this one, the numbers, and then just the list of the numbers. Then the output of the second one would be just one by one the letters, and here printing out the whole name. And then the last one is that we have the range operator that returns a range object. Okay, it's doesn't matter for now for what. And I even wrote it in a separate way. Usually, probably you will write it for num in, and you have the range function right in the in statement. But I wanted to point out that here this if I call range and return and assign to some variable, then I can iterate over the values that this range object provides. So in this case, we go over from 3 to 9, 9 not included. With jumps of 2. So it's 3, 5, 7, and 9 is not included. And if I'm printing out this RNG variable, then I'm going to get this. So this is the string representation of the range object. Okay, but that's again, these are all three things are something that you can iterate over them. If we are talking about range, let me just go over what the various things. So range actually can have 3 parameters, where we have the start, the end, and the step, when end is not included as usual in Python. We can also use range with 2 parameters. Then it's start and end, and the step defaults to 1, so it would be one by one the numbers. And you can also use range with 1 parameter, and in that case, note that it's not the start, as maybe you would assume, but it's actually the end. So, and then the start defaults to 0, and the step defaults to 1. So range and just a number would go from 0 till this number not included, 1 and 1. So here is again the same example. We assign the range into this variable that I just called RNG, and I printed out RNG, which just shows again the range. If we ask what is the type of it, and specifically if you want the name of the type, and then you say that this is a range type. And then if I try to iterate over this RNG object, then I get the values, okay, one after the other. Okay, if I try to do it again on the range object, okay, so on the range object, I can do it again. I can even access elements of this range object using the same notation as you would do in a list. Okay, on a list or a string where you would access a specific character with this. So this is the range object. We can also use the list function on this range object. So I'm talking about Python 3, of course. In Python 2, actually, the range function would already return a list. Okay, so that's one of the differences between 2 and 3. Just in case you are here for some historical lesson as well. And then in Python 2 there was an xrange function, an external xrange function that was providing this functionality. But in Python 3, the range function returns this range object. Now, if we call the list function on this range object, it will flatten the list. It will exhaust all the. Sorry, not the list. It will flatten the content of what range would return. Okay. So because it's a finite list of numbers, it will return that finite list of numbers. In this case, if I call range and then get the range object back, if I call list on it, then the numbers is going to be, if I print out the numbers, it will be the list that contains the numbers that would be returned if I was iterating over the range as the range object as we just did earlier. And I can of course do this in one step. I don't need this special temporary RNG variable. So I create the range and immediately call list, and I get the others, just a variable that has that content. Okay, these numbers. And then there is the interesting part, okay, that I'm going to show you, that why is it really interesting that range doesn't return the list? Why not just return the list and that's it? Why did they even change it from Python 2 to Python 3? So let's take a look at what the size of this data structure. So the sys module has this getSizeOf method or function that will get an object, a data, one object in Python, and return how many bytes it uses in the memory. So if I take the RNG, which is the range object, it will say 48. Okay. And if I take the numbers, which is a list that contains the same values that the RNG would return, then it takes 112. So this already, even in this such a small case where you have 3 elements, you can already see that this takes more than twice as much memory. And then in the next page, you can see that I have just a simple function that what it does, it goes over the numbers from 0 till 20. Okay, remember 21 is not included. Calls range with that number. Okay, this is just to separate uses of range. So calls range with that number, assigns it to this variable RNG, flattens it to create the list of all the values, and then prints out, using this case format, the number, the current number, the size of the range object, and the size of the list containing all the numbers. So you can see that even with 0, it already takes, the list already is bigger, even if the list is empty. So even the empty list is bigger. But as you see, as the number grows, the size of the range object stays the same. It doesn't change. It just contains numbers, the edge numbers. But the size of the list changes. So you can see that very quickly takes up a lot of space. And therefore, using a range object is way more space efficient than if you were creating the list and then iterating over the numbers of it. So that's a little intro and a little about range and iterables.